Good evening and a very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us on our economic forum where we focus on all things relating to the economy. My name is Farai Gwaze. Today we're taking a very close look at housing economy, its significance, but more importantly, how we can make better sense of how it contributes towards Zimbabwe and its development. Helping me unpack that and a few more aspects that we'll be touching on during the course of our discussions is our relator, Mr. Clark Makoni. Clark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Farai.
Now, before we get into our discussions, we just briefly share with our viewers a bit of your experience within the real estate sector and industry.
I'm a realtor, that is from Sunday to Sunday, January to January. We are a sector that is very sensitive to the economy. Visit any country and just look at their real estate section. It tells you their stage of development. Right. Unfortunately, in Zimbabwe, we have a lot of people that are in our market who are not professionals, who are not part of any of the regulatory bodies, and we're not getting the true direction that we should be seeing at this stage of our development as a growing economy.
How much time would you say in your experience within the real estate sector have you discovered some of these anomalies and challenges that are being faced?
Well, as somebody who's been at this for going on to 13 years now, we have seen the whole gamut. We've seen the cycle of real estate in Zimbabwe. We've seen the ups and downs. We saw what happens when our economy faces challenges and how real estate reacts to that. There's been 2 deep seasons where a lot has gone on, and real estate in Zimbabwe has now come to the center stage, reaching a position where you find that most businesses, when inflation was high, they moved into the real estate market as a way to hedge against inflation.
Now, talk about inflation being high. I think you've also shared at great length in our prior discussions to this year how if someone was to want to acquire property from the period of 2000 going onwards, it wouldn't be as well advised. Give us a bit of where that kind of a position comes from.
First of all, it's always advisable to buy property.
Right.
We always joke around and say, buy land. They don't make it anymore. Right. It can be funny, but it's a fact as well. So it's always a good idea to buy either land or land that has property on it. Zimbabwe has faced inflation, and if you want to safeguard your investments, you buy land. So unfortunately, there's been a rush into the property sector, and a lot of the people, they are newbies, and they are building 5, 6, 7 bedroom houses as first time builders. They don't even know who to hire. So the quality of workmanship, the quality of even design that is on the market, especially with the newer properties, is quite questionable.
Is that what makes that particular period of 2004, 2005 quite significant? Help us quite appreciate why that time is important.
Prior to that, there was no rush. There were no new people who were buying a first property in Borodro, for example. Right. What has changed now is, since property is being seen more as an investment, you've got businesses that have the liquidity that can just go and outright start in Borodro.
Right.
But that does not make them professionals all of a sudden.
Okay.
So when they move into Borodro, they don't even know who to hire for that level of finish. Right.
I also appreciate how you do bring up a very affluent suburb in Harare, most notably in Zimbabwe, the part of the northern suburbs. How do we get to the point where we find the value of such areas being as high as they come? Like, what contributes towards the value being as high as it is?
Location, history, right? Take a place like our CBD, for instance. Right? You build any apartment block near the CBD, it's going to do very well.
Right.
Yeah, people want to be near work. They want to be near school. They want to be near shops. This is just a fact of real estate. Location.
Right.
So you look at an area like Borodro. This is where those who are more privileged in society have grouped themselves together. So you're going to see better security. You're going to see better roads, because you've got people who are influential, be it in society or in government, living there.
That affluent space also does bring up another interesting part that I'd want to touch on, especially when it comes to value of an asset. We noticed a very clear shift within a certain period of time in our economy where commercial properties started coming up in residential spaces. Give us a bit of what contributed towards that anomaly taking place. What was once a middle class or a suburb now turns into commercial properties where offices are housed.
It goes back to our CBD and how the council is running it. Our CBD is now overcrowded. There's just no direction when it comes to service and maintenance, right? So take our high-rise buildings, for example. You find that the service lifts don't work. So it may have 9 floors, fair enough, but who wants to be on the 9th floor?
Right.
Whereas if you go back or go into any other economy, the higher you go, the higher the value is.
So it's fair to say that it also is working out, well, I don't want to use the word cheaper, but lack of a better term, cheaper for commercial operators to buy residential properties, revamp them into commercial spaces.
You see, commercial operators are very sensitive to how they're perceived by their clients. You understand what I mean? So you want to be able to control from your gate what your client sees as they drive in.
Right.
And you can't do that in town. Parking space on its own can give someone a big enough headache up to a point where they don't want to visit you.
Right. So in essence, we could say that we're also seeing an expansion, as you clearly put it, of the CBD and its overpopulation spreading further out. We will take a short break and we'll be right back with more Economic Forum. Feel free once again to keep engaging with us during the course of the discussion. Welcome back to this second segment of Economic Forum, where we focus on all things relating to the economy. Today, looking at the housing economy, and I'm joined in studio by a realtor, Mr. Clark Makoni, who's also been sharing a bit of his insights in the housing economy. Now, before we took a break, we're talking about the CBD's expansion, and I'm glad that you do highlight how its expansion required movement outside. But let's look at a particular building, well, two notably, but one more in particular, the Joiner Center. When that particular building went up within the CBD, it was also based on the fact that there was a large amount of traffic that was going in and out of the CBD, and being able to house enough commercial operations in one space would suit this great demand. So we seem to see investment to grow within the CBD, but we also see a spreading out of various players to the peripheral areas of the CBD. Give us a bit of an understanding of how and why that's taking place.
All right. First of all, I'll touch on expansion. Would you say the expansion is due to growth or businesses running away from the CBD? Right. The latter seems to be true. Right. Joiner Center, it's unique in the sense that if you look at when they started constructing it and to when they finished, it took quite some time. So the owners of it probably had one idea, and the economy changed so many times before completion. That being said, it's still one of our better structures in the CBD. But I would like you to move outside Joiner, see what's happening right across the street, where you've got your lottery house, etc. That's turning into a tuck shop zone. So here we have one building which should be a blueprint of what our CBD should be like. Right. You've got your Joiner City, you've got your Eastgate.
Yes, yeah.
That would be an amazing direction for us to take.
Right.
But what are we surrounding these?
It did seem as though that when you had the Eastgate structure set up and then Joiner coming after that, there was that trajectory taking place. And I'm glad that you do bring up the economy and some of its influences. But then, as you clearly point out, big players need to be able to bring in significant contributions. Then how then do we tie it into the investment potential to be able to grow some of the commercial properties within the CBD?
We need to see a situation where we have a unity of purpose, right? Government, council, business. Right. We need to be able to come together and discuss what direction we are going as a unit.
Now, in your opinion, what direction do you think that would be best applicable for us to go in?
We need to standardize our things.
Okay.
Right? If you look at the city of Harare, our CBD, where do you go if you need to use a bathroom? That's a problem, right? Probably from a design perspective, our CBD is operating with 10 times more than the population it was designed for.
Okay.
How does that affect us? How does that affect quality? What's the perception of a foreigner when they're walking through our city? How do we make that better?
This also seems to speak to a vision at 2025, if I'm not mistaken, for Harare to become a world-class city. This is a council provision there. Do you think we can make that kind of timeline with the way that we're currently going at it?
I think we can.
How so?
Look, the funding exists in Zimbabwe. Okay. Right. Some of our laws, especially our council bylaws, they may need revisiting. They're quite old. They go back to the Rhodesian days.
Right.
We need to work on that. But council also needs to have a platform where they can interact with local government and business. Less politicking, more development.
Right.
This is really what we need.
Right. I'm glad you bring up politicking, because that also does bring up the issue of land barons. It seems that they are a scourge and a plague towards a housing economy and the land development in general. How best would you describe the way forward to being able to address the housing deficiency, but at the same time deal with the scourge of land barons?
Arrest fraudsters. They're not land barons. They don't own the land. So somebody shows up today and they start selling something that they do not own. Right. How is that a land baron? These terms are defined. So these are fraudsters. Arrest them, throw them in jail, set an example. Right? Those who benefited from the land as well. What is the character profile of the purchaser? You're buying land with absolutely no paperwork. Right? You are cheating the system.
Right.
You're trying to get advantage at the expense of others.
Right.
So demolish those properties.
Right.
Illegal properties
Right.
sold through theft, or not even theft. This is just
So just so I can also appreciate where you're coming from, we're saying that the fraudsters themselves, by virtue of them engaging in fraudulent activity, must feel the full wrath of the law. And then also us as the public citizenry, when we're going to try and cut corners in acquiring a land, these are the repercussions that come from them.
There needs to be consequences. In any functional economy, when you break the law, there are immediate consequences you have to deal with.
Right.
So if you're going to go and purchase a piece of land, let's say for argument's sake, 1,000 square meters, and you pay $2,000 for 1,000 square meters, you know you're cheating somewhere.
So what more can be done to at least be able to not only address this particular issue to the public, but at the same time also get to the point where we've got an equitable application of land being issued and returns coming from them?
I believe government has a responsibility or even a duty to assist the less fortunate.
Okay.
There are two markets in our nation, right? We've got the private sector, which is doing very well, which has the money to purchase land on their own.
Right.
I feel if our government were to make it easier for those with the funds to access land, they could make a profit whereby they would then assist those who are less fortunate. You know, those who, because of their stations in life, will never own a property if you were to ask them to compete against the private sector.
And I'm glad that you bring up that point about never owning a property. There's always an argument that gets put forward in that our economy was at some point conducive to being able to own a home and own land is one thing, but to be able to develop on that land and have a home. And now we do find ourselves experiencing a considerable challenges. Before we get into our final segment, a brief position on what your take is on some of the opportunities available for people to actually own their own developed land.
The opportunities are real, but unfortunately, it's a question of funds. Can you afford? Because right now, Zimbabwe is more or less a cash economy. And it's cash economy from the ground right up to the ceiling.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's difficult for the average person, your average middle class, to purchase a whole property outright for cash.
Yeah.
This is why we need mortgages. But, movements are being made. Some banks are looking into offering 20, 30-year mortgages if they can secure that contract in foreign currency.
And that's where the other difficulty that comes in. Maybe we can just delve a bit more into that. That you got a 20, 30-year mortgage, but at the same time with a 90% unemployment rate and 10% of those being able to maintain sustainable employment, one wonders as to whether those systems will work. But we'll discuss that when we come back for our third and final segment here on Economic Forum. Stay tuned. Welcome back to this third and final segment of Economic Forum, where we focus on all things relating to the economy. My name is Farai Gwaze, and I'm currently joined in studio by our relator, Mr. Clark Makoni, as we look at the housing economy of Zimbabwe. Now, before we entered into our third segment, I'd brought up, well, you had rather raised the issue of mortgages, and I was interested to be able to appreciate how viable that would be under the current economic climate that we find ourselves in as Zimbabweans.
The biggest challenge we have as a nation is there seems to be an agenda to always paint Zimbabwe black. Like you said yourself that our unemployment rate is at 90%. And for some strange reason, this is accepted. But is that a fact?
Right.
Just a basic search will tell you that the actual unemployment rate in Zimbabwe is 5.2%.
Right. Now, when we say that the unemployment rate is at 5.2%, and then we've got the inverse stat that says that unemployment is at 90%, it seems as though it brings up the issue of a formal and informal employment. So are we finding that there's a discrepancy, that we actually do have a significant group of Zimbabweans who are economically viable, just not under what we would refer to as formal employment?
There's no discrepancy.
Okay.
That 5.2% is from the ILO.
Right.
Now, that's not a Zimbabwean organization. These are not government figures.
Right.
So our unemployment rate is at 5.2%.
Right. So we've got a 95% economically viably employable collective.
Yes, we do.
Right. So then how then do we tap into that to be able to ensure that we do see an issue of our housing economy being addressed?
This is now where the disconnect exists. When we are formulating our policies, we need to sit down with all relevant stakeholders. If they come to us in real estate, we'll say, fine, we understand what government is trying to achieve, but remember, we've got mortgages. Remember, we've got rental contracts. For example, the shortest rental contract, the shortest lease is 1 year, right? So when you throw an SI that says with immediate effect, where does that leave us? Mm-hmm. You are leaving us in the cold. But if we are able to sit down together, understand what you're trying to achieve as government, we also give you our input, and we come up with acts, SIs that are holistic in their approach. Mm-hmm. That does not leave a whole sector alienated. I mean, we've had situations where, because of one announcement, all property owners who are selling have said, no, pause, we can't sell anymore. How do we get our money?
Right.
And this is a real issue. You're facing inflation, and you're selling, let's say, a house that is worth $500,000. Mm-hmm. You will be worried about how are you going to make your money back.
Right.
If I sign this agreement today, will I get that same value next week when the papers are processed?
Talking about getting your value next week, I do want to also open up into a typical position that's held by many Zimbabweans who manage to acquire a bit of money in whatever way they may see it. Common position is acquire yourself a piece of land, get a stand. Right, and despite whatever one wants to use that stand for, that seems to be the basic position. Have we not progressed from that, and if so, how?
There is no way you can progress from that. What just happens is, what is your situation? Are you looking to buy a property for you to reside on? Are you looking to invest? Is this just an investment for you? If you are looking to invest, yes, you can just buy a piece of land and park it, so that you have hedged against inflation and all other challenges that may come over the next 10 years maybe. Mm-hmm. If you are looking for somewhere to live, you'll be bothered about location. How long do you want to stay there for? Mm-hmm. Are you ever going to rent out this property? These are the factors that a lot of people do not consider.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what would your advice be to someone who is liquid at some point here and wants to be able to put their money into real estate? Are you looking at someone who wants to own what would be the most economically profitable way to take advantage of real estate at the moment?
Get professional advice according to your particular situation.
Right.
The biggest challenge we see on our market is a lot of investors are using their hearts to go into it. They're building what they like. Whether that's relevant on the market, is neither here nor there for them until it's time to put it on the market and nobody wants it. So instead of building what you like, you want to move into property, align yourself with real estate professionals.
Right.
Talk to them. They'll advise. Also, what's missing is the legislative side.
Right.
As people now look into investing, we are trying to see if we can introduce the blockchain. But if you look at what happened a couple of years ago, the RBZ moved in and they banned that. They banned Bitcoin.
Right.
So we don't have a Bitcoin exchange in Zimbabwe, which I understand. That's how you also secure your financial sector as a country. But we would want more engagement where we can try to explain to them what the blockchain does and how this can be an entry for those who want to invest in real estate.
It seems as though you're implying that there is a bit of an appetite for local players to want to be part of the housing economy in Zimbabwe, but then we still seem to keep seeing a challenge on the follow through. I mean, like, we see developments taking place, but are properties being taken up are they being taken up in a manner that shows that the environment is conducive for housing development?
Look, Zimbabwe has got a huge shortage when it comes to housing. So there will always be uptake. We want to see a situation where somebody who earns $300 can also invest in real estate.
Right. I was going to get that. So what about the low-cost housing element? How then can that also be facilitated, especially through government intervention?
We understand that our government would want to do such things. Our president was on record trying to push that agenda. But what we are saying is it doesn't need to be a government project alone. The private sector also wants to come in.
Right.
This is why I keep going back to legislation. We need to sit down, we need to talk.
Right.
The funding is there. People have now woken up to real estate, but they also want to understand. I'll give you one good example. Say residence for students. Right. So many companies want to move into that sphere.
Right.
There are so many universities that have gone up.
Yeah. Where's the blockage then? Ownership, right?
Yes. You can't go and build on the university and own it.
Right.
Why? One line in an act can change that. And our government will have all these universities with sufficient residences.
Mr. Makoni, we are about to wrap up our discussions. What would your closing remarks be to the nation, especially when it comes to addressing issues of the housing economy?
Let's unify our legislature and also let's modernize our things a little bit. We've got, for example, I spoke about the blockchain. There are new things coming up, such as asset tokenization. It's also going to allow everybody to play a part in real estate, where we break up ownership. Say a $100,000 property is broken up into 100,000 tokens.
Right.
So the person who's got $200 can buy a single token, and they've got ownership in that property.
Right.
So there's a huge space in real estate. The money is there, but the environment is not conducive for a lot of the big players to move at the pace that they would like to.
That's it. No, Clark Makoni, thank you so much for joining us here today. We definitely do look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Thank you, Farai.
Unfortunately, that's all the time that we do have here on our Economic Forum. My name is Farai Gwaze. Once again, feel free to engage with us on our social media platforms. That's Economic Forum Zimbabwe. Or get a hold of us on our WhatsApp platform. In the meantime, that's out from me. God bless and good night.